Okay, guys, let's jump into V0.103. I've heard this is insane, so pretty excited to actually take a look through it. Hey Slayers, Casey here. This week's beta patch brings two major changes to how scoring works for daily leaderboards. First and foremost, the leaderboards will now only show your friends' scores. This is probably good to reduce some cheating stuff. Yeah, so I think this is pretty much what they were going for. No more magic numbers. Well, there's still points accrued for unlocking new cards and such. That score that's sent to the leaderboards and how it's sorted is based on whether you won, how many badges you accrued, and how quickly you finished the run in that order. This should clarify why you did better on a daily run compared to your friends. Okay, I don't really care a ton about this, at least for how I play the game, but just gonna read stuff so people can have that if they want. Because of schema, I don't know how to say this word. Anyone know? Because it's changed, leaderboards between main branch and beta branch will now separate going forward. We'll eventually add more features like sorting and whatnot, but in the meantime, do let us know what you think of these changes. Apologies in advance for any bugs. Okay, now let's take a look at the rest of the updates, including updated art like No Name Pepe above. Great. Some reworks and balance changes. A new Ironclad card and new Neow relics. That's very cool. Okay, content. Hey everyone, Anthony here. This week I'll be grouping balance and content changes together to better talk about how each section changes overall. Ancients. Added new Neow relic. Neow's bones. Upon pickup, gain 2 random Neow relics. Add 1 random curse to your deck. This is a lot better than the rare. So I think the problem with random rare for curse basically is that you kind of get owned sometimes because you get a curse and a second card that functions as a curse. For this, that's pretty insane. Neow bonuses are really strong, and I imagine that getting 2 of them at once is just going to be insanely powerful. I can't really see why it wouldn't be. I guess you technically could get a curse, and then also, again, you can get a curse. So you can get this into random rare into the thing, and then also into card pack or something. There's some bad hits. This kind of feels similar to boss swap to me, but I imagine that this is better than most things. The variance of this is going to be overall a lot lower than just clicking 1 and getting owned. File holster. Upon pickup, gain 1 potion slot and procure 2 random potions. That's actually very strong. I think a lot of people underrate the importance of having potion slots in this game. The way that Spire is sort of balanced is that a lot of the encounters are just not created equal. You can essentially have a time where like your hallways are never challenging you. You're taking 0 damage and you walk into elite and you can die from full, right? So these encounters like are not equal threats to you. So potions are really good to kind of smooth out that curve and fix the problem with a lot of these fights that can randomly kill you. So not only do you get the potion slot, which is insanely strong, but as well, you get 2 potions immediately, which on a bad map from Neow is insane. The main problem with potions in Spire 1 from Neow was that you can overlay pots in the hallways, and this means that you don't waste value. You can just procure 3 pots basically in the easy pools and then walk into an elite and just murder it. And so your Neow bonus can really be just get the best possible path on the map with also a potion belt upside. That sounds insanely strong. Wing boots. You may ignore pass when choosing the next room to travel to 3 times. This is just a rare relic from Spire 1, now as a Neow relic. I think overall this is not going to be too insane. The biggest thing for wing boots is to like kind of farm a ton of elites. Clicking it from Neow, you don't really have any information on whether or not you can farm elites yet. Maybe I could see some use for it if the map is really bad and you want like a safer map and you can just like jump to fires or something and get upgrades. Probably what this ends up looking like is you trade pathing for upgrades instead. Your Neow is essentially just get a couple of extra upgrades, have a safer map. Again, if the problem with this game right now in terms of difficulty is that Act 1 is so difficult, then anything that helps you in Act 1 is pretty good. So I think this is maybe not insane, but definitely above bar, and you're going to click it sometimes. Okay, we have 3 new Neow options you can choose from. I especially like adding more variety to Neow. I do agree. I think the Neows in this game, there's not that many compared to the old game. So we'd be looking to expand her set of relics even more over time. That's very good to hear. I would like having a lot of variety and not just clicking transform 2 every run. That seems good to me. As long as they're not just like all super bad or all super good or whatever. You want some variation here. Okay, Ironclad. Added new card, not yet. Rare skill cost to heal 13 upgraded HP exhaust. Okay, in Spire 1, we had Reaper, which is fairly comparable to this, but Reaper needed a couple more hoops to jump through, and that was 4 HP heal in a fight. And you could scale it with strength. This looks like it doesn't get as breakable, but the floor is a lot higher. So this is pretty insane. I think people maybe don't understand how good healing is in this game, but you can essentially think of HP being one of the biggest resources you can spend. I think the most obvious one is that if you have health, you can upgrade at fires more frequently, so your health turns into upgrades. But another big one is that you can make concessions in your deck building sometimes because you need to pick bad early game stuff to get you to be able to survive the act. If you have a healing card like this, it means you can sort of just skip cards and only pick good ones, so your deck gets better over time. I think that is a concept that is pretty important to think about when you think about adding healing to this game, is that you can just build a better deck because you have more HP. Like you can say, I'm going to walk into the elite, and while before healing is in the game, you can only spend like 20 HP in the elite, and that's about it. But now you can maybe spend 40 HP in the elite, which means your deck just doesn't have to be as good at dealing with the early problems, and you can focus more on solving later problems. That's super, super strong. Deprecated grapple card. That's fine with me. I think this card had like no use cases really. I don't love them adding healing, but I think that's going to be extremely strong. Colossus card rarity decrease from rare to uncommon. Insanely strong as well. Colossus is like one of the main ways you can actually block on Clad. This essentially is turning Vuln into weakness. That's kind of how you should think about it. It's even better than weakness. Obviously it's only one turn, so you can't like stack it, but it multiplies with weak as well. So if you have like uppercut or shockwave from colorless card or something, if you have any source of weak, you're basically going to take nothing. So Clad essentially just got two tools that increases his survivability. They literally say this here. You increase your survivability in a big way. Moving stuff to uncommon that helps you block is really nice and maybe opens up some of the actual block archetype cards into being picked more often. Not 100% sure. Colossus, probably the biggest enabler, is going to be 4 Barricade. This is one of the only ways you can actually overblock on the character and store block between turns. So maybe you have like 1 or 2 Colossuses, which I assume you will take probably at high frequency because, you have Vuln all over the place on this character now. That's really, really insane. That's going to be a massive change for Cloud. I do think that this change in particular is going to increase win rate by a lot. Huge buffs overall. Okay. Silent changed Acrobatics card rarity increase from common to uncommon. I think this is fine. You can look at all these cards over here and look at sort of this rate that you're paying for draw 3, and it does fall in line with uncommon. I don't think Acro honestly is insanely problematic. I think prepared is probably a bigger issue compared to Acro, but I don't mind this. Silent nerfs I feel like definitely seem needed right now. She seems like by far the best character, just insanely strong. Okay, reworked follow-through card. Uncommon attack cost 1. Deals 6 to 8 damage to all enemies. If the last card you played this turn was a skill, apply 1 to 2 weak to all enemies. To common attack, cost 1. Deals 7 to 9 damage. If you have 5 or more other cards in your hand, hits an additional time. Obviously, with Acro being nerfed alongside it, this is going to happen less. Silent losing weak doesn't really matter too much since you have weakness in the starter deck. I don't mind her having a common attack here. I think they're just switching the rarities to not mess up the number or the ratio. Oh, it's not AoE. Okay, kind of unpickable then. I was reading this as AoE, but yeah, that does not seem very good then. Unfortunate. Kind of just a brick then, for the most part. I don't think you ever really want something like this. It like multi-hits, but you already have a lot of multi-hit stuff. And you have, Shiv cards now, like Leading Strike, that create multi-hit stuff. And you'd rather have multiple attacks played to actually proc your ninja relics or something. Yeah, it seems really bad. Again, I don't mind the silent nerf so much. Buff Momentum Mori card, base damage increased from 8 to 10 to 9 to 11. I think this card was kind of weird and never really picked up. It's probably worse with Acro nerfs as well, so I can't imagine this mattering too much. Buff Speedster card, damage increased from 1 to 2 to 2. Upgrade change from +1 damage to gains innate. I think this upgrade is not that great. This card still is not very good. Speedster even at 3 was not amazing, especially again, Acro is nerfed, so you're going to be able to enable something like that worse. I think Speedster probably still just never really getting picked. If the upgrade was -1 energy is a bit more pickable, but again, I think Door got some changes in this patch, so there's a couple of enemies in the game like Queen as well that makes it harder to pop off with these combo cards. And when Speedster is like your main damage engine, I don't really feel like I want it. Count Gamble exhausting also makes it harder to proc more often. Maybe it's an infinite outlet thing if you have like prep into reflex, and that is a way to infinite through Door. Again, we'll see if that changes. Okay. Acrobatics has consistently been a problem at common, completely dominating both win rates and pick rates. When compared to the other cards in its family, Skim, Parse, Glimmer, and Burning Pact, it stood out as the only common. At uncommon, I expected to still dominate pick rates, I agree, while giving me the breathing room to not overnerf like cards, and in fact maybe even give silent buffs. I'll be watching to see how this change impacts her pool in particular this week. This is still an experiment, so it could be reverted if this change ultimately ends up being worse for the game. I don't think it'll be worse for the game. I think overall it's fine. Unless they want Silent to be known as kind of like the draw character, which she does have stuff that interacts with that. I don't think she really is the best at drawing cards probably anymore. And I don't think this is necessarily even Silent's problem. I think it's more problematic that like footwork and weak chain and piercing whale exist all at common, basically. Not footwork, but a lot of her block tools and like dodge and roll is really strong. There's dex options from colorless cards. There's a lot of relics that give dex, even 1 point of dex on this character. And, you know, just weakness will block like the entire game. And so it seems to me like this is not really the main issue. They already hit the Sly cards kind of hard enough, I think. There's a lot of other enablers in her kit that make her just way too strong anyways. Sly was just like extremely dominant at release, but now is not so much the case anymore. We're kind of back to like Feet Fumes plan sorts of playstyle. Okay, Regent. Change Regalite Relic now. Grants block for any card created, not just colorless cards. That's pretty insane. This will play off of a lot more stuff. Already this relic was kind of insane, and a lot of what has been happening, I think, behind closed doors recently is that we're sort of having this Regent revelation of like picking Pillar of Creation, picking the card generation stuff, making block engines through that, and sort of just having a bunch of stuff in the deck. Not necessarily like building an entire deck around that, but like a lot of those cards are just sort of statted well. The block card that makes a colorless card is just really strong. Overall, colorless cards are just quite good in this game. So it seems to me like this is maybe a buff that just isn't needed. Obviously, it's on a relic, so you're not going to see it as often, so it's probably a lot less problematic. Okay, enemies. Deprecated Tunneling Twosome Fight from the Hive. Nerfed Living Fog no longer increases the amount of bombs it spawns over time. Okay, this fight's basically a joke now. If this only spawns 1 bomb ever, then the max output it does is 18, and that seems not threatening. Currently, this is one hallway that I think you actually had to prep for inside of Act 1. It can own you if you're playing like Silent Necker or whatever, you just don't have a lot of attacks, but overall, he takes a lot of time to actually scale to that point. I don't think this is really that big of a deal. Most of the time, you're only ever seeing the 2 bombs, even in a slower deck, or you maybe have to play a bit better in the fight and make different decisions, like not blocking the 6 damage and instead just playing your Vuln or something and then hitting the main body. So I think this did create some interesting micro situations that I liked. I don't really think it needed to be nerfed in this way, but we'll see. Nerf Skulking Colony HP decreased from 74 to 79 to 70 to 75. Okay, this means that you can kill it 1 turn early if you're damage capping every single turn, which right now, the way we're playing this fight is not really that. You're kind of sitting there and blocking, so I don't imagine this will change too much. But yeah, 75 to 79 is the exact threshold to actually kill a turn early, so that is something to think about. It will help probably Clad the most here out of all the characters, since he oftentimes doesn't block this fight as well as the other characters, but most of the other characters are sitting in here for a while and using weak chain and whatnot to kill. Nerf Berdonis. HP decreased from 71 to 79 to 74 to 79 to 81 to 90 to 84 to 90. So basically what this means is on High Ascension, that Berdonis always has 99 HP, and now it has 90. So 9 HP nerf is insane, basically like 10%. I don't think this elite was that scary. This basically turns it into Gremlin Knob from the first game, just without the mechanic, and it doesn't hit as hard. We know how long it takes to kill Gremlin Knob, and so this is a very familiar threshold. I think you would be surprised how often this actually means you can kill a turn early and not take another hit. So overall, this is a really, really big change. That's 9 HP is a lot. That's 1 strike with Vuln, so 1 energy basically you're gaining, or 2 energy worth of attacks if you have no Vuln, which most characters won't. So that's basically an entire turn. That's insane. Okay, nerf Doormaker. Okay, a little sad, but I know people are complaining. Overall damage number is nerfed and moves moved around to better align with the Doormaker powers. Okay, don't know what that means. We will take a look at that. Can I add like max HP? Relic, add pair. Okay, let's go from the beginning. Jason buys pair, the classic. Big hit turn 2. And then multi turn 3. Multi turn 4. So small hit turn 2. Then multi turn 3. And I assume this is just buff now. And it gains 2 strength? 4 strength. 4 is not that much. By the time that this is hitting you for like 50 or something, that's what you care about. It's just going to take too long. And you're also not getting your dex debuffed. So you're scaling, because also doing this is scaling the player by quite a lot. Isn't this way harder than Donodeka? No. Donodeka has an artifact to chew through. There's 2 of them. And they don't take turn 1 off. And there's Act 4. But like, I think the main thing here is that this takes turn 1 off to give you a free setup turn. And then doesn't really actually hit you that hard, especially with weakness. It's like, if you weak chain this guy, this hits nothing. I mean, it's just not going to do anything. Okay, but like, look at these numbers with 4 strength. All I'm saying is that weakness is just way too broken. This is phase 3. And the final boss is hitting you for 32 with weakness. If maybe you're having a hard time visualizing the number decreasing to a reasonable number, like you see 50 and you go, oh God, but then you weaken the enemy and it just doesn't hit you at all. Like that's a bigger thing. My proposed idea for Door. The phases should be randomized. Maybe it always just turn 1 is off. And then what it does after that randomizes. It can never do the same phase twice because it always has to swap. But it could just like swap in and out. And that way you kind of don't know how to prep. You can get maybe unlucky or whatever, but it would be a more interactive fight. No longer applies debuffs, gains less strength. Okay. This boss, I assume now, if it has the same moveset in any order, doesn't matter what, is now just not going to be a problem. He gets all the same things. And it says, additionally, I've started focusing on removing some of the spikiness from Act 1. Okay, so not like talking about Door here, so I'll continue on with the Door stuff. But this wasn't really too bad. I do think you had to consider Door. But overall, this just means it's not going to really scale. And the problem right now with Door, I think as player skill gets better, the phase where you get to exhaust a bunch of cards is just a buff to the player. I think as a new player, you probably don't want to be playing your cards and have them exhaust. But as you get better at the game, I think the more and more you realize how being able to like tighten your deck up and remove a lot of your base cards and a lot of cards that you just don't care about playing again. Like let's say you play like Shockwave and then you also have like, you know, your Regent Falling Star, whatever. You can just exhaust Falling Star because you don't need to keep that around anymore. You have Permavuln for the whole fight, that sort of thing. And then you just never draw that brick again. That can definitely happen here. And I think already he was not hitting hard enough. And it seems like now he's just going to not hit hard at all. Again, we'll verify. But yeah, it seems to me like this is going to make it much easier to win the run, since Doormaker was one of the only things in the end game that could actually even kind of hit you and really wasn't hitting that hard for the most part. I think going long in Doormaker is what's scary, and now going long is no longer scary. That overall, I think, is kind of just it's not going to be problematic. You already get a free turn in this fight to set up. I seem to think now that this is just not going to be very difficult at all. Okay, that is a huge amount of balance changes. Let's go ahead and move on to art here. Added portrait art for the following cards: Adaptive Strike, Shadow Shield, Smokestack, Bad Luck, Outbreak. Added new art for Nona Pepe Ancient Background, as discussed above. Added new art for the following Neow Ancient Relics, Hefty Tablet, and Neow's Talisman. I actually like the Neow's Talisman art, so I'm curious what they changed it to. Updated art for Osteed, Character Select Screen. User Interface and Experience. Players on the beta branch now submit their scores to separate beta-only leaderboard. Added a scroll bar to the Run History screen. Badges now show up in Run History screen. Very nice that they actually did this, because I didn't see the point before. Cleaned up the screen when loading a multiplayer daily run so that it matches the standard daily run screen. Daily leaderboards now show off-floor badge count and time instead of score. In multiplayer games, gold scores average out across all players to make score uploading consistent for the new schema. Updated leaderboard view in the game over screen. Leaderboards shown in the game over screen in dailies now fit better. Okay, this was definitely needed. Your name on the leaderboards are now highlighted blue so you can more easily find yourself. Rewarded Spiraling Whirlpool event to explicitly state that it can only enchant a basic strike or defend. Good to... Yeah, I've definitely noticed stuff like this. There's some things in this game that apply to like Ultimate Strike and Ultimate Defend and also other strikes. And then some things like this that would say strike or defend but actually only mean basic, so they just needed to clarify. But yeah, it's clearly coded differently, so nice on them to do that. Added wrapping and navigation to Relic Inventory bar on controller. Big Divination button, Hotkey, and Crystal Sphere event no longer uses deck view button on controller. Writing. Archaic Tooth Relic now properly says transform a starter card into an ancient version instead of with an ancient version. Flat Cannon card description now highlights status in gold. Flanking card now properly specifies that it only doubles attack damage. Iteration, Rocket Punch, and Trash to Treasure card descriptions now say status instead of status card. Pale's Tooth Relic now says cards devoured instead of cards in the pot. Updated translations for various languages. Fixed translation errors for the following languages. Updated credits. Bug fixes. Fix a black screen at launch issue related to seam crashing. Fix soft lock related to opening a secret debug menu. Fix an issue where if the player dragged a multi-target attack out of their hand, the damage amount previewed on the attack wouldn't include their strength if some enemies have vulnerable while others didn't. I actually did notice this, I think. But overall, I would end up doing math in my hand. But nice to make it just sort of easier on the player here. Ascension unlocked text no longer displayed in daily custom runs. Fix leaderboards not being centered properly on non-standard aspect ratios. Fix cards in hand not being deselected when pressing the top panel hotkey button. Fix merchant hand not initially hovering over the first card in the shop when on controller. Players and enemies maximum block has been increased to... What? Wait. That's not just a bug fix. That's actually a thing. I mean, it's probably not going to matter, but I literally had a run today where I went to 999 block. So, very weird. I guess big number is fun. You can have a massive body slam now if you're willing to sit there for forever. Negative power amounts can no longer stack below minus. Yeah, big number. Okay. Silent. Fix Blade of Ink card listing the generated enchanted shivs in the run history combat rewards. I did notice this. I think Open put in a bug fix for this. Fix Knife Trap card causing the exhaust pile UI to display an incorrect number of cards. Regens. Fix to all enemies not appearing in the Sovereign Blade Forge animation when playing Seeking Edge card. Fix Reflect card enchanted with imbued wearing off before the player's turn actually begins. Necrobinder. Fix Borrowed Time plus card not having green text in its upgrade preview. Fix Self-Doom killing the player if they kill the enemy via Stampede card first. I wonder what poor soul stumbled into this. Enemies. Fix Knowledge Demon background music not playing Finale when you defeat him. Fix Queen background music not ending if you kill her before the Amalgam. Fix Missing Crossbow Ruby Raider fire animation. Poison now always procs before the Insatiable tries to eat you. Events. Fix being able to drink the fruit potion in the Stone of All Time event if you open the pop-up as the screen is fading out. Also, I just registered that I guess this is a bug, which is actually big. I've died to that before, so that is not actually a bug. That is a gameplay affecting change for sure. Okay. Multiplayer. Fix being able to play potions in multiplayer when you're dead. Fix Belt Buckle Relic removing dexterity if another player gets a potion from Alchemy card. Fix History Course Relic playing Believe in You card before the start of turn energy reset. Fix Smokestack Power proccing off of other players' statuses. Fix Strange Behavior after exiting the timeline via a Steam invite. Fix some state divergences when using console commands in combat. Fix state instances of unexpected no connection packet error. Fix state divergence related to upgrading a monologue card enchanted with royally approved. Fix timing-based softlock related to Golden Compass Relic. Okay, overall, huge patch. This is probably one of the biggest patches in a while. The Neow changes are definitely a big one. Mostly silent nerfs with acro changes. But a lot of these cards, like, I'm not really going to miss this too much. I think follow through I'll miss a little bit. But overall, like, I'm not thinking about these cards in general anyways. And I can play silent without acro and it's going to be fine. I do think it's just like Sly is already sort of not the most important thing to be doing, especially with like door changes. But now it seems like honestly that door is just not going to be that strong, which is probably the biggest change. Door went from like one of the harder Act 3 bosses. I think Test Subject and Door are usually the two ones that you actually have to consider and think about. And now you don't really have to think about it very much. It seems like it's just going to help the player out. Lots of buffs to the player just via enemy nerfs. All of these are coming out of Act 1. And so reducing difficulty in Act 1, I think, has a very large problem. Again, as I was talking about before, you can sort of just build a deck for the end game and ignore the early game problems. I don't think I love the fact that these enemies are nerfed just off of the fact that Act 1 feels like the most engaging act to me right now. Very frequently, I'll play Act 1, and I know once I beat the Act 1 boss, the second I see my Ancient bonus in Act 2, I'm going to be strong enough to speed my game up. Like, a lot of my runs, about 60 to 70% of the playtime is spent in Act 1. And that is because Act 1 is the most dangerous act and the most interesting to play. And right now it feels like if you play Act 1 well, the rest of the game is really smooth. And now it seems like you can kind of get away with not playing Act 1 as well, and the rest of the run will still be smooth. Or you can intentionally take things that are bad inside of Act 1 because Act 1 is just less challenging, and then prep for like Act 2, Act 3 earlier, which just makes the rest of the game even easier. So when you're thinking about changes inside of Act 1, you have to realize that good players will abuse the snowballing effect of Act 1 being easier, which will lead to the whole game becoming a lot easier. Act 1 is going to have the biggest impact on what you can actually do outside of Act 1 as well. If you think about Spire 1, how Gremlin Knob warps your deck building and means you can't build certain styles of decks that we in this game can, you realize in that game how much like garbage and attacks and whatever you have to add to your deck to get through Act 1 affects your end game, and your end game decks are looking different because Gremlin Knob's existence, right? In this game now, it feels like there's way less consideration for that, and also the end game is just getting easier because of Door nerf. This is just a massive buff to the player, regardless of silent changes or whatever. The Ironclad buffs are insanely big, and this is also going to have some really terrible interactions with something like Hidden Gem, where you stall for this and get it to hit and then heal like 39 HP or whatever. That is not great. I do think overall that I am not the target audience. Probably top players are not the target audience. I understand that. So I'm not necessarily upset that these patches are going on like this. I think they're addressing issues that newer players or less experienced players in general are going to have because the game feels too hard and too punishing. But I do think that at the end of the day, like in months or whatever, years even, that I would love if the game's difficulty is increased. I don't know when that will happen. I'm not in a huge rush for that to happen necessarily, but this is a very, very big change. I'm excited for new Neow relics. Not this one, but up here. I'm excited for this sort of thing. I think this does make the game more interesting. But overall, this especially looks quite strong. We're already sort of breaking the game in ways that are not so fun sometimes. So I'll be curious how this lands. I think the general consensus, and if you've been watching the chat on the side of the screen, you probably have realized that a lot of the top players in here are not very happy about this patch. And I think I would say I agree with that, but I recognize that I am not the target audience. And so I'm not going to be like upset about it. I don't think I like this direction necessarily for my purposes of wanting to play the game. But I understand if they need to do these things for other players, or for the game to be more accessible to other players, I should say. That is my opinions on this patch here. Yeah, thanks for watching, YouTube, and I will see you guys next week for this and in a couple of other videos throughout this week.